December 10th, 1941. The first pale light of dawn glints off the restless waters of the South China Sea. A chill cuts through the morning mist, carrying the tang of salt and diesel. Off the coast of Malaya, Task Force Z, HMS Prince of Wales leading, Repulse close behind, moves with grim purpose, engines humming beneath steel decks. Sailors clutch rifles, adjust flat guns, eyes scanning low clouds that veil distant horizons. Suddenly, the stillness breaks. The droning of aircraft engines, low and insistent, rises from the haze. Figures emerge through the fog, black silhouettes against the dim sky. Japanese bombers, perfectly aligned, descending with lethal precision. Across the decks, commands crackle over radios. Men brace for the first deadly impact. Smoke coils from the funnels as crews man anti-aircraft batteries, hearts hammering. Explosions puncture the calm. Water columns erupt alongside the ships, throwing spray and flame into the air. Shrapnel and seawater mingle in the faces of those at their stations. Every man knows, in a heartbeat, that survival depends on instinct, training, and a measure of luck. Steel groans. Guns fire. Torpedoes streak the waves. The battle has begun. History balances on knife's edge. The war has reached the waters of Malaya, and Task Force Z stand alone, facing an enemy whose aerial mastery will test the limits of the mightiest ships in the Royal Navy. December 1941. The Pacific War had not yet erupted in full, but the tension in Southeast Asia was palpable. Japan had spent months preparing for a coordinated strike, its forces massing in southern Indochina and northern Malaya. British intelligence knew that their positions in Singapore and the Malayan Peninsula were vulnerable, yet the full scale of the Japanese offensive remained unclear. For the Royal Navy, the protection of sea lanes and deterrence of Japanese expansion rested on a single hope: Task Force Z. Task Force Z was a bold gamble. It consisted of HMS Prince of Wales, the new King George V-class battleship, and the battlecruiser HMS Repulse, supported by 4 destroyers. Prince of Wales carried a main battery of 10 14-inch guns, an array of secondary 5.25-inch guns, and a handful of anti-aircraft weapons designed more for defense than overwhelming firepower. Repulse, older but still formidable, boasted 8 15-inch guns and a complement of anti-aircraft batteries. On paper, both ships were capable of confronting enemy surface vessels, but the skies were another matter entirely. Captain John Jack Leach commanded Prince of Wales. Young, precise, and disciplined, he had trained his crew meticulously, running drills that simulated aerial attacks and torpedo approaches. Captain W.D. Tennant, commanding Repulse, was seasoned and resolute, known for aggressive seamanship and the ability to maneuver a capital ship under fire. Admiral Sir Tom Phillips oversaw the operation, confident that his modern battleship and battlecruiser could outmatch any Japanese surface threat. Yet even he understood the limitations: no carrier air cover, limited radar reach, and an increasingly hostile sky. The crew of Task Force Z, numbering in the thousands across both ships, carried the weight of the Empire on their shoulders. Engineers checked boilers, stokers shoveled coal, and gunners polished their weapons. Every man moved with silent anticipation, aware that the coming hours could define their lives. Across the water, Japanese reconnaissance had already spotted the British ships. Bombers and torpedo planes were prepared to execute a strike that would test every skill and courage of those aboard. As the ships steamed toward Kuantan, the ocean reflected the pale light of dawn, concealing a threat that would soon descend from above. The air was tense, humid, and electric, every sailor acutely aware that the next sound, engine roar, bomb whistle, or shell impact, might signal the beginning of a battle they could not survive. The stage was set. 2 of the Royal Navy's finest ships, led by resolute captains and an ambitious admiral, faced an enemy whose air power and precision would soon rewrite the rules of naval warfare. The quiet of the morning belied the storm that was approaching. The waters off the Malayan coast were deceptively calm that morning, their surface reflecting the gray light of dawn. But beneath the placid exterior, currents ran strong, and the shallow continental shelf offered both advantage and peril for naval maneuvering. For Task Force Z, maintaining formation and speed was critical. The slightest misstep could expose the capital ships to torpedoes from planes or submarines lurking beyond the horizon. Every nautical mile carried the weight of strategy, training, and the knowledge that in modern warfare, the sky had become as deadly as the sea. HMS Prince of Wales was a technological marvel, equipped with radar that could detect surface targets at long ranges, though its ability to track fast-moving aircraft was limited. Its guns, though powerful, were slow to elevate, making anti-aircraft defense a challenge. Repulse, older and lighter in armor, relied heavily on maneuverability and the skill of her crew. Both ships lacked adequate fighter protection. The Royal Air Force had few aircraft in the area, and carriers were not in position. The Admiralty had hoped that the presence of these capital ships would deter Japanese aggression, but deterrence would require more than size. It would require fortune. Japanese doctrine emphasized air superiority and coordinated strikes. From Formosa to southern Indochina, squadrons of Mitsubishi G-3M and G-4M bombers had been drilled to perfection. Dive bombing and torpedo attacks were synchronized with meticulous timing, exploiting weaknesses in anti-aircraft fire and naval maneuvering. The Japanese had studied the Royal Navy's capabilities, understanding that even the fastest or most heavily armored ship could be neutralized from above. Each pilot knew the statistics, the risks, and the potential glory, yet they were under orders that prioritized mission success over individual survival. On the British ships, tension was tangible. Deckhands, sailors, and gunners performed last-minute checks. Ammunition was hoisted, sighting equipment adjusted, and damage control teams reviewed procedures. Men whispered prayers, lit cigarettes in stolen moments, and glanced at the horizon, scanning for the faintest disturbance in the clouds. For these men, the sea was both home and battlefield, a place where skill, courage, and timing could mean life or immediate death. The commanders knew the stakes. Admiral Phillips understood that any miscalculation could destroy his squadron. Captain Leach, with radar screens and charts before him, anticipated threats from the air as much as from the sea. Captain Tennant prepared to execute evasive maneuvers with precision that would test even the most seasoned gunners. Yet, all planning was limited by one immutable fact: the enemy controlled the skies. The calm morning would not last, and the approaching Japanese strike would confront every strength and every weakness of Task Force Z. As dawn broke fully, the South China Sea seemed almost serene, belying the storm of steel, fire, and water that was about to engulf the Prince of Wales, the Repulse, and the men aboard them. The world held its breath, waiting for the first whistle of bombs and the scream of torpedoes cutting through the waves. Human perspective, the men aboard HMS Prince of Wales and Repulse were ordinary sailors thrust into extraordinary circumstances. Engineers labored in the bowels of the ships, sweat mingling with oil and salt water, as boilers roared and pumps struggled against creeping flooding. Gunners clutched shells, fingers numb, eyes fixed on the distant silhouettes of Japanese bombers. Fear was constant, yet so was resolve. Every man knew the cost of hesitation. The rhythm of life became the rhythm of survival. Each explosion, each torpedo, a heartbeat in the fight to endure. Young ratings whispered to themselves, while officers barked orders through clenched teeth, their faces streaked with grime, eyes hollow with anticipation. Tactical perspective Task Force Z relied on maneuver, firepower, and coordination, yet the environment exposed vulnerabilities. Prince of Wales radar offered early warning, but tracking high-speed torpedo planes remained difficult. Repulse's main guns could strike distant surface targets, but were slow against diving aircraft. Both ships depended on speed, turning and weaving to disrupt the torpedo tracks. The anti-aircraft guns, despite disciplined crews, struggled against multiple simultaneous attacks. Tactical decisions, how to angle the hull, when to fire, and how to evade, were made in seconds, often without certainty of success. Every maneuver could save the ship or hasten its destruction. Leadership perspective: Admiral Phillips, Captain Leach, and Captain Tennant bore the burden of command with a mixture of calm determination and grim acceptance. Phillips coordinated the squadron, aware of their strategic significance, yet powerless against the full force of Japanese air power. Leach managed the anti-aircraft crews and flood control teams, balancing aggression with preservation. Tennant executed audacious maneuvers with repulse, relying on experience and intuition to dodge torpedoes. Their decisions were measured, swift, and high stakes. A single misjudgment could doom hundreds of lives. Leadership was tested not in calm waters, but in moments of chaos, smoke, and the roar of engines overhead. Technological perspective: Prince of Wales represented cutting-edge naval technology, radar-assisted targeting, advanced fire control systems, and armor designed to withstand surface attacks. Yet against air-delivered torpedoes, these innovations were insufficient. Repulse relied on traditional gunnery and crew skill, proving that even older vessels could execute evasive maneuvers with precision. Japanese aircraft exploited the technological gaps, using high-speed dives, coordinated formations, and torpedoes designed to strike below armored belts. The engagement underscored a harsh lesson. Modern capital ships without adequate air cover were vulnerable, no matter how advanced. The human, tactical, leadership, and technological angles intersected, creating a perfect storm. Sailors acted, ships maneuvered, commanders decided, and machines performed, but the skies would soon dictate the outcome. The calm of the morning was about to be shattered. Enemy perspective: from the Japanese vantage, the attack was precise, disciplined, and ruthless. Pilots of the Mitsubishi G-3M and G-4M bombers had trained relentlessly, their dive angles calculated, torpedo drops timed to perfection. They viewed the British ships not as faceless steel, but as high-value targets demanding skill and coordination. Each plane that survived the flak barrage carried the weight of the mission on its wings. Communication among squadrons ensured maximum coverage and minimum overlap, exploiting every gap in the British anti-aircraft defenses. For the Japanese airmen, this was both duty and demonstration of mastery, proving the supremacy of coordinated air power over even the most formidable ships. Moral perspective: the engagement tested courage, ethics, and endurance. Sailors faced impossible odds, yet continued firing, repairing, and saving comrades. Officers wrestled with impossible choices: order men into near-certain death to maintain operational control, or preserve life at the cost of mission failure. Each torpedo that struck, each explosion that ripped through decks, forced instant moral reckonings. Survival meant action, yet every action carried consequences. Witnesses later reflected on bravery, not the glory of triumph, but the quiet persistence of ordinary men performing extraordinary duty, knowing that the world would remember both their valor and their sacrifice. Environmental perspective: the South China Sea itself shaped the battle. Early morning fog blurred the horizon, masking the approach of torpedo planes but also obscuring the gunner's aim. Waves rose and fell with deceptive calm, sometimes guiding torpedoes along deadly tracks. Wind carried smoke from anti-aircraft fire and engines across decks, mingling with the scent of salt and oil. Visibility was erratic, light shifting from gray dawn to harsh reflection on rippling water, complicating maneuvers and targeting. Even the sun, hidden behind clouds, played a role, glinting off torpedo trails and momentarily blinding crews. Nature, indifferent and omnipresent, influenced the fate of men and ships alike. The combined angles: human, tactical, leadership, technological, enemy, moral, and environmental, frame a battle not merely of ships and weapons, but of strategy, courage, and the interplay of human and natural forces. By understanding these perspectives, we grasp why Task Force Z faced such devastating losses, and how the Prince of Wales and Repulse exemplified both valor and vulnerability in the face of modern warfare. December 10th, 1941, 12 p.m. The morning fog lifts just enough to reveal the oncoming Japanese torpedo bombers. HMS Prince of Wales steams steadily, her crew bracing for what they know is inevitable. The first torpedo streaks through the waves, its white trail a silent harbinger of destruction. Sailors on deck duck instinctively. Gunners squeeze triggers, flak shells bursting overhead, showering sparks and smoke. Yet the aircraft press forward. A second torpedo follows moments later, slamming into the starboard side. Water surges through the breach, pumps struggle in vain, and chaos ripples through the crew. Men shout orders, patch holes, and drag the wounded toward relative safety. The ship lurches, a massive steel leviathan wounded, yet not yet defeated. Across the water, HMS Repulse faces its own nightmare. Captain Tennant executes desperate maneuvers, turning sharply to throw torpedo, tracks off course. Anti-aircraft fire lights up the decks, tracer lines arcing toward diving bombers. Still, Japanese planes come in relentless waves, releasing torpedoes with terrifying precision. Explosions rip through the deck and hull. The ship tilts dangerously, water rushing in through damaged compartments. Every sailor is tested to the edge of human endurance. From the bridge of Prince of Wales, Captain Leach coordinates the defense with grim efficiency. Orders are crisp, voices calm despite the pounding of the enemy. Flood control teams fight back rising water, adjusting ballast to keep guns operational. Every second counts. A single misstep could mean the loss of the ship. Japanese pilots dive again, the roar of their engines cutting through anti-aircraft fire, diving low over the waves. Bombs strike Repulse, torpedoes tear at both hulls. Smoke chokes the decks, saltwater sprays over men crouching behind rails. The air is thick with tension. Sailors fight not just the enemy, but the inevitability of their situation. Every torpedo that misses, every shell that bursts harmlessly in the water, is a fleeting victory. Yet the Japanese persist, relentless, coordinated, skilled. The calm efficiency of the Royal Navy meets the deadly precision of modern aerial warfare. The sea itself becomes a battlefield, a medium carrying death across every cresting wave. By 12:15, both ships are heavily damaged. Prince of Wales lists to port. Flooding hampers gun crews. Smoke blinds the bridge. Repulse struggles with a jammed rudder. Engines still functional, but unable to escape coordinated attacks. Men cling to life, trusting training, instinct, and one another, knowing that the next moments may decide their fate. The climax of the engagement is building, the destruction inevitable. December 10th, 1941, 12:20 to 12:50 p.m. The sky is black with Japanese aircraft. Torpedoes streak across the waves in precise arcs, each one a potential death sentence. HMS Prince of Wales lists heavily to port. Water surges into engine rooms, flooding compartments. Pumps groan under the weight of the sea. Crews scramble across wet, slippery decks, dragging hoses, patching holes, trying to keep the guns operational. On Repulse, Captain Tennant struggles to maintain maneuverability. Anti-aircraft fire lights the decks with tracer lines, yet bombs and torpedoes strike again. Explosions throw sailors into the air, smoke and oil coating the decks. Men cling to rails, to each other, to anything solid as the hull twists under impact. A torpedo pierces the midship section, flooding compartments in seconds. The ship shudders, listing sharply, water rushing over the sides. Captain Leach watches from the bridge of Prince of Wales. Orders are issued with calm authority despite the chaos. Flood starboard voids. Keep guns trained. Men respond, some in shock, some driven by sheer willpower. Torpedo after torpedo hits. The ship's ability to steer diminishes. Smoke and fire mingle with salt spray. Every man is acutely aware. The ship may not survive, but every second of resistance counts. By 12:35, Repulse's list worsens. The engines roar futilely against the current of destruction. Torpedoes continue to strike. Decks tilt at impossible angles. Sailors climb and slide down the sloping starboard side, jumping into life rafts or the oil-slicked sea. Chaos reigns, yet discipline holds. Orders to abandon ship are finally given. The crew fights panic with training, with instinct, with camaraderie forged under fire. At 12:50, Prince of Wales succumbs. Water surges in her hull. She lists dangerously, then begins to slip beneath the waves. Captain Leach coordinates final evacuations. Men swing across ropes to the nearby Destroyer Express. Gangplanks collapse, cables snap, yet hundreds are saved. Admiral Phillips remains on the bridge almost to the last moment, silent, watching the sea claim what no human can hold. Both ships are lost, iconic symbols of British naval power brought down by precise, overwhelming air assault. The ocean is littered with debris, oil, smoke, and the exhausted survivors who cling to life in lifeboats. Task Force Z has been annihilated, a decisive moment that demonstrates the devastating effectiveness of modern aerial torpedo tactics against even the most formidable capital ships. The sinking of HMS Prince of Wales and Repulse marks a turning point in naval warfare. The era of battleships' unquestioned dominance ends as aircraft and torpedoes define the future of naval combat. The loss of HMS Prince of Wales and Repulse sent shockwaves through the Royal Navy and the world. On December 10, 1941, a modern, well-trained fleet, carrying some of Britain's most powerful capital ships, was decisively defeated by coordinated Japanese air power. The 18,000 tons of water that flooded the Prince of Wales, the multiple torpedo hits on Repulse, and the rapid capsizing of both vessels underscored the vulnerability of battleships to aircraft. Strategically, the event shattered the myth of naval invincibility. The era in which steel and armor alone determined dominance at sea had ended. Admiral Sir Tom Phillips and Captain Leach, despite meticulous planning and skillful command, faced overwhelming odds. Japanese bombers exploited speed, coordination, and tactical precision, illustrating a new paradigm in naval warfare. Aircraft could strike with deadly efficiency, even in broad daylight. The Royal Navy's inability to provide air cover or scout reconnaissance highlighted a crucial gap in Allied naval doctrine. Historians would later point to Task Force Z's radio silence, dispersed formation, and the lack of fighter support as critical vulnerabilities that amplified the Japanese advantage. Human cost was immense. Hundreds of sailors were killed instantly by torpedo strikes and deck explosions. Many more struggled to survive in oil-choked, debris-littered waters. Life rafts and makeshift lines saved several hundred, but chaos, shock, and hypothermia claimed additional lives. The crew of Repulse displayed extraordinary discipline under fire, evading multiple torpedo attacks, maintaining anti-aircraft fire, and executing emergency maneuvers, demonstrating courage that would be praised in naval records for decades. Technologically, the battle marked a turning point. Battleship armor, once the ultimate defense, proved inadequate against aerial torpedoes and high-speed dive bombing. Anti-aircraft guns, though deployed with determination, were insufficient against large, well-coordinated formations. Observers noted that coordinated attacks from multiple angles, combined with speed and surprise, allowed even outdated aircraft to destroy heavily armored ships. In essence, the Royal Navy witnessed firsthand the birth of modern naval aviation supremacy. The sinking also had wider strategic implications. With the fall of these ships, the Japanese achieved temporary dominance in Southeast Asian waters, opening the door for rapid advances into Malaya and beyond. Allied command recognized that without sufficient air cover, capital ships would be exposed to annihilation, reshaping planning for future engagements. The psychological effect on naval personnel and commanders was profound. What had seemed invincible was now fallible, redefining naval strategy for the remainder of World War II. The ocean off Malaya became both graveyard and lesson. The sun glinted over floating wreckage and lifeboats. The smell of oil and salt lingered. Survivors recounted heroism, discipline, and horror. The ships themselves, once symbols of might and national pride, now rested beneath waves, silent monuments to the deadly evolution of warfare. By the end of December 10, 1941, Task Force E had been annihilated. HMS Prince of Wales and Repulse were both lost, with only a fraction of their combined crew surviving. Casualty estimates vary, but roughly 840 men perished across both ships, while hundreds more were rescued by accompanying destroyers and makeshift rafts. The scale of human loss was staggering, compounded by injuries from explosions, fires, and the cold, oil-slicked sea. Every survivor carried the physical and psychological scars of a battle that had unfolded with relentless precision. Operationally, the sinking of these capital ships left the Royal Navy temporarily unable to contest Japanese dominance in the South China Sea. Malaya, Singapore, and the surrounding territories were exposed. Japanese forces gained unchallenged mobility for amphibious landings, reconnaissance, and supply routes. Strategists noted that the destruction of the Prince of Wales and Repulse removed not only the immediate naval threat, but also the morale and symbolic presence of Britain's fleet in the region. The fall of Singapore, only months later, would underscore the catastrophic strategic impact of this defeat. The battle also accelerated doctrinal shifts in naval planning. The Royal Navy and Allied navies worldwide recognized the urgent need for carrier-based air cover. Battleships alone could no longer enforce sea control without fighter protection and early warning systems. Tactical lessons emphasized dispersal, reconnaissance, and coordination between air and naval units. Lessons painfully learned through the sacrifice of these two vessels. Naval engineering also evolved, with improved anti-aircraft systems, radar integration, and compartmentalized damage control emerging as direct responses to the vulnerabilities exposed that day. On the Japanese side, the operation validated innovative air tactics and confirmed the strategic value of fast, coordinated strikes. It demonstrated that superior planning, reconnaissance, and aerial coordination could overwhelm even heavily armored adversaries. Pilots and commanders executed near-perfect timing, using altitude, speed, and formation to strike effectively, setting a benchmark for subsequent naval air operations across the Pacific theater. The wrecks of Prince of Wales and Repulse became underwater monuments to the lethal shift in naval warfare. In later years, both ships would be referenced in training, doctrine, and analysis, illustrating the human, tactical, and technological costs of underestimating the power of air assault. Survivors' accounts emphasized courage, skill, and leadership in the face of overwhelming odds. Captain Leach, Captain Tennant, and their crews became emblematic of heroism and resilience, a somber reminder of the stakes of modern naval combat. The Pacific War had entered a new era. Steel alone could not guarantee survival. Aircraft had redefined dominance at sea, and Task Force E's destruction became a pivotal case study, shaping Allied strategy for the months and years to come. The sea claimed two proud ships, hundreds of men, and with them, the illusion that battleships ruled the waves. The sinking of HMS Prince of Wales and Repulse marked more than the loss of two ships. It signaled the end of an era. Battleships, once the ultimate symbols of naval power, were rendered vulnerable by the speed, reach, and precision of aircraft. In the span of a single morning, decades of strategic assumptions were overturned, replaced by a new reality where dominance required air superiority as much as steel and guns. Yet, beyond tactics and technology, the story of Task Force E is a story of human courage. Sailors faced overwhelming odds with discipline, skill, and resolve. Captain Leach, Captain Tennant, and their crews exemplified leadership under fire, making impossible decisions in the face of near-certain destruction. Their actions, often unnoticed in broader histories, highlight the weight of responsibility and the fragility of life amid the machinery of war. Strategically, the Pacific theater had been transformed. The Royal Navy's setback opened the way for Japanese advances in Malaya, Singapore, and beyond. Globally, navies reassessed doctrine, prioritizing carrier-based aviation, reconnaissance, and integrated defense systems. The lessons of December 10th, 1941, would reverberate throughout the remainder of World War II, shaping training, design, and the very philosophy of naval engagement. Ultimately, the story of Prince of Wales and Repulse is both caution and inspiration. It is a reminder that technological supremacy is never guaranteed, that courage can shine even in defeat, and that history often pivots on moments of profound vulnerability. The ships lie beneath the South China Sea, silent witnesses to a changing world, but the deeds of those aboard endure, etched into memory, informing the way we understand warfare, leadership, and the fragile balance of human endeavor in the midst of history's relentless tide.